Coach, how exciting of a time is this for you and your staff and your players, first day spring drills?
Well, the spring's always exciting, and getting out there back on the field is always exciting, but it's also exciting when Phil Webb takes the athletic department to new heights with a women's basketball championship. Nice job, Phil. Faith, good job, and hands the baton over to Don, and Don gets a couple of baseball and softball wins, and tennis is doing extraordinarily well, so we're off and running in that respect as well. And for football, we don't play until next September, so is it an exciting time? Yeah, it is, because in football, it's one of it might be the only sport where you don't get a lot of individual time on the field. You don't get any between the end of your season and spring practice as far as football-related things. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us to have 15 days with our players and get out there and teach the game of football. And for us, like you said, 14 returning starters. I think we have 16 or 17 that have started football games. So the emphasis is going to be on probably the other 80 guys that are out there more than it's going to be on those 14 to 17 guys.
I mean, more on that as far as trying to establish depth and who's going to challenge for starting spots in the fall. What are some of the positions specifically that you are looking for depth more than others? If you're just
well, I think if you look at wide receiver, I think on the offensive side of the ball, that's where you'd have to start. I mean, there's 4 guys that played 99% of the snaps last year, and anytime you lose a guy that's as talented as Dominique Johnson, I think you have to be concerned about who that guy's going to be. But we've done a good job recruiting there. We think we have some good players that are in the program, and we think we have some good players that are coming into the program. But what a tremendous opportunity for Lance Castaneda to come out. And if you looked at him today, which hopefully you did, I mean, he's 6'3½", 218 pounds, and looks it. And he's a redshirt. He's got 4 years eligibility left, so we're expecting him to continue to make great progress as a player and hopefully capture that Z or that outside field wide receiver position. At the X position, we moved Jared Houston back to the X position, and Brandon Machakowicz, who redshirted last year, who was the conference junior college player of the year in his conference, and we were able to redshirt him last year. He's looked extremely good as well. So we think that is a position of question, but we do think there's a lot of talent at that position, and now they're going to get the opportunity this spring to show their stuff, so to speak. I think on the defensive side of the ball, I think when you lose a guy that, to me, if you look at the middle of the field, it's always, it's an important part of the game, and you lose James Chen right up the middle, Marty Mohammed, the middle linebacker, and Scotty Cordier at a safety. Those are 3 pretty good football players. And, James and Marty were all conference players, and Scotty was honorable mention, I think. But really, if you look at Scotty's kind of that guy that everybody looks at that's not the biggest guy in the world, he's not the fastest guy in the world, but he had a lot of glue to him. And not only as far as how he played, but I think the players stuck to him for other reasons, too, his leadership skills and those things. And I think anytime you lose 3 seniors up the middle of the caliber of those 3 young men, those are going to be tough places to replace. But fortunately, defensive line, I think we're still pretty talented. Now we're real senior-oriented coming into the season, but I think there's 8 or 9 guys that we think are very good football players. So as much as James is moving on to bigger and better things in the world of medicine, we think it's given opportunity to some other guys to step up and take his snaps, which I think is going to be a great thing for Sullivan Gross, Chris Lawrence. Those are 2 guys that we're going to have to step their games up and give us a lot of downs, along with Eric Clemmy and Kevin Hess. Middle linebacker, we're going to take Kenny Jackson, and for the 3rd year in a row since we've been here, we're going to change his position from weak side outside to strong side outside, and now he will be the middle linebacker. And I think that that's a great place for him. If you looked at him today physically, he's done some great things with his body. He's 232 pounds. Really feel like his knowledge of the game and his overall the ability to make the transition from truly the weak side outside guy to the strong side outside guy, we think he's very ready to take those reps inside. At the safety position, Greg Francis does come back, but I think that there'll be a battle for the other safety position. Matt Reza, a junior college transfer who will be ready to go on Wednesday, was admitted late to the university, so we had to get him eligible before he could take the field, and he'll be out there Wednesday. And I think David Douglas, the freshman from Oakland, has lost about 17 pounds and looks a lot quicker. And I think that usually we're talking about guys getting bigger and stronger. For us, we wanted to get Dave leaner. And I think Dave Wood downstairs in our weight room, our strength coach, has done a tremendous job getting those guys ready to perform. And I think that's really what this thing's all about in the spring is let's find out what your young players have done in the last 6 months to ready themselves for what college football is all about.
For once, while you're here to start spring, we won't bug you about quarterback questions every week. Just kind of talk about Andre going in, well, after this week, I should say. Talk about Andre going in as the number 1, and just kind of what you're expecting from him and from the rest of the guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. If you look at the 4 games Andre started last year, they were pretty productive football games for him personally. Now, we didn't play extremely well probably against Southern Utah on the scoreboard, but Andre did some things that were good even in that football game. But if you really look at the way he played against McNeese and the way he played against Old Dominion, I think that those are the flashes that we're looking for, and even the way he played against Fresno. And I think that with that we think he definitely is ready. Now, we are adding some things on offense, and we think that both he and Doug and the other two young men, Kenny Johnson and Vince Moraga, have the opportunity to really have the ball in their hands a little bit more maybe than they did in the past. But we think that Andre will get enough reps to make sure that he's sharp, but we're going to be pretty protective of him. And we don't have to go into camp saying that you two got to battle it out, and then one hurts his knee and one hurts his ankle, and we end up with Doug Shumway, who was pretty good too. And if you watch Doug out there, he's right behind him. So, I mean, it's not like Andre doesn't feel like there's somebody behind him that could beat him out. I mean, Doug Shumway is ready, and I think that that's a good thing for anybody to feel the pressure of number 2 behind you. So, but Andre Broadus, his leadership skills have really, you can see the confidence. And at that position, confidence is hugely important, and I think that Andre definitely possesses that.
Tim, what are you allowed to do with your team between the last game of last year and now? What are you allowed to do with them as a head coach or as a coaching staff?
Well, there's a lot of academic things that happen that we're able to do, and that's a good thing, I guess. We're with our players every morning for an hour academically. But as far as getting them on the field, I mean, we conditioned them after the signing day. That first Wednesday was the first time that we were really with them from an athletic standpoint. And largely it's due because a lot of us are gone during the recruiting season, but also it's to give them the opportunity to get in the weight room and truly do the things we think they need to do from a strength standpoint, and also let their bodies rehab a little bit from a rigorous football season. Give them a couple of months where it's totally weightlifting. And then we got out there and we were able to see them once a week. We did the conditioning, which is a station conditioning, and everybody thinks that it's to make them better athletic. It's a team toughness thing. It was a stations deal, and really work on toughness. And I think that's one of the areas I think that we as a staff have identified in our 2 years here, that we think that we need to be a tougher football team. I think we're at a pretty good place, that kids feel pretty good about themselves and all that great stuff. But in reality, in the game of football, there's going to be some tough times. And I think that if we can do one thing better this year than we did last year, and I think we made improvements on it from year 1 to year 2, is the oldest saying in sports: when the going get tough, the tough get going. And you have your opportunities, and you can't waste them. And to be honest with you, hindsight's 20/20, but we had opportunity last year to do a little bit better than we did, and unfortunately we didn't. And we think that toughness may directly tie into that part of the equation.
You'd mentioned Kenny Jackson gaining weight and Douglas losing weight, but who else have you seen in the offseason that caught your eye, you took notice, that made some significant changes either in their body or their athletic ability going into the spring ball?
Well, I think there's numerous guys. I mean, if you look at Johnny Millard's bigger. He looks more like a linebacker now. I mean, he's 226, 227 pounds, and the transition from a 204-pound safety to a 216-pound outside linebacker to a 225-pound outside linebacker is going to help him immensely. His strength has gone up tremendously as well in its 2 years. And what you want to do is we don't want instant growth, because instant growth is usually bad growth one way or the other, if you get what I'm saying there. But when you grow over a 2-year period, that's what you want. You want it to be a thing that is gradual, because usually that weight is solid weight. It's put on in a way that's correct for your body. And to put on 20 pounds over 24 months is kind of what you're looking to do when you add weight to a young man. And he's done a tremendous job of it. On the offensive side, a guy that has been here for a while, Carl Winkleman, has probably opened the most eyes. I mean, he was a 237, 240-pound defensive end, and now he's a 252-pound, which for us, offensive tackle, is what we're looking for: athleticism and good enough size. And Carl's done a great job in the weight room and listening to what we said would get him on the field. Now, is it going to be enough? Well, it's going to be enough for him to get a lot of opportunity this spring, because really 5 or 6 of our offensive linemen are not going to practice, or they're not going to practice very often. So it's going to give those guys number 6 through 17 on the offensive line an opportunity to truly compete. And Carl's one of those guys we're expecting good things from.
In viewing spring ball, where is the line to be drawn between it's a competition and it's education from a football standpoint?
Don and I were just talking about that ourselves, about the way it used to be 30 years ago to the way it is today. It's changed. And there's still some guys that I quote unquote might be old style, but the bottom line thing is really it's an educational time for players. The two things you're trying to do is teach them technique, the fundamental technique, and the schemes that you use and how they can apply the technique to that scheme. And without them beating up their bodies, because this game is bigger, stronger, and faster than ever at every level. I mean, the levels of, where we are today is probably what big-time college football was 15, 20 years ago. And, so we want to keep our guys as healthy as we possibly can. We do want to do enough to where they can, number one, do it safely, which is an important part of the game, and secondly, that they can demonstrate that they are physical. And the fine line, I think, between the whole thing is the key words I talked about before. How can you teach toughness without banging against each other all the time? Well, there's ways to teach toughness, and you have to make sure that they understand there's a right way to perform in team settings, and there's a way we don't want to. So they have to listen to the tempo, and they have to be able to play to the tempo, but that doesn't mean they can't play physically.
Coach, last year in the Great West, before you guys move on into the Big Sky, how important is it for you to kind of make that statement in this conference before you head on to bigger and better things in the next conference?
I think it's pretty important. I mean, I'll take that one personally, and I hope our team takes that personally too, because two things I want to say about the Great West as it goes away is, number one, it's become a much better football conference than it was 6-7 years ago where I was before we played a couple of the teams. It's a better football conference. Every team has improved. North Dakota and South Dakota are good. Davis has always been Davis. And if you look at the team that's drastically improved their program, it's probably Southern Utah. So I think in those respects, I think I have a lot of respect for the conference. And therefore, I think that, Cal Poly needs to finish this thing the right way, and we need to win the Great West. And so going into it, that's the goal, but it's going to be difficult for us. But on the other hand, we do have a lot of guys that have competed at a high level, at the level we need to play at.
What one or two things are you really excited about with this year's team right now, just from what you've seen and getting ready for the the fall?
Well, I think number one, I think that I'd put it first and foremost is I think that there's a hunger based on how we finished the year last year. I think that there is some carryover to that this year. And I think that they understand how good we can be, and I think they're hungry to be as good as we possibly can. And I think that desire is something that, it has to come from within. And I think our players have that right now. I think they're excited about the season. I think they understand the difficulty that the schedule presents. But in reality, I think they're ready for it. And I think it's going to be a fun season for that reason. And I think, secondly, I think that what we just talked about a little bit, I think the Great West thing, I think, is another thing that burns in the, take the playoff thing out of last year. That was probably the number one thing that burned inside of them. But how we kept ourselves out of the playoffs, and truly we kept ourselves out. But secondly, the fact that they want to win, we want to win the Great West. And we want to end the thing the way Cal Poly should end it, and that's being the big Great West champion. So I think that's the two things that I've definitely seen from our players, and I think that started in the weight room right after the season. It's gone into our conditioning and running, and I think it definitely appeared today on the field. We had a great practice this morning with a lot of enthusiasm. Yes, there were a lot of mistakes, but guys were running around. I thought the practice flowed extremely smooth.
Looking at just a few days ago, we had the NFL scouts here, and then the pro day. We hadn't had one at Cal Poly in about 4 years, I believe. What does that say about for you guys as a football team and Cal Poly as a school, and even for the guys that are younger on the squad to see their seniors and juniors getting looks and help them to maybe realize that they might be able to take that next leap here in a few years as well?
Well, I do. In the recruiting process, I always ask people who, arguably who's the best wide receiver that ever played the game of football. And young people all raise their hand and say, anybody want to answer?
Jerry Rice.
Good answer. Where did he go to college? The guy went to Mississippi Valley State University. So you can achieve what you want to achieve as a football player, and we have the unique combination to achieve academically what you can achieve at a great institution, and then put the plus sign next to it that says you can still play in the NFL. I mean, you look out of there and you look at Chris Kokong and what he's done, and Ramses and what he's doing, and hopefully what's going to happen for DJ and maybe Marty. I think those things are great opportunities for young people, and for young people to see that, yeah, you can attain both goals. I mean, if you look at the guys who are out there the other day, Eric Gardley will graduate this spring, but DJ graduated after the winter quarter, and Marty graduated after the fall quarter. And I think that there they are, graduates of Cal Poly and good majors, and have done well and probably have great careers outside of football in front of them, but football's still in front of them too. What a great way to end it all. I mean, if you look at it, I think that's a great opportunity for those young guys, and hopefully we'll have even more, and that'll bring back more scouts every year. Yeah.
About Issa. He ran, I saw that in the release, it was a 4.440.
Okay, I've known Ray Biggs, the guy who did the timing for the NFL. I've known him for 30 years, and he is notoriously slow in his finger reaction time. So if Asa ran 4.4 flat, that is flat flying. I'm just telling you right now. Yeah. Now, he also tweaked his hamstring and didn't practice today, so there's good and bad to that whole deal. But he's another one of the guys that we really don't need we don't need a ton of reps from Asa Jackson this year, and we want to keep him healthy and let him have a tremendous senior year. So if he's a little nicked up, you may see a little bit of him as the spring continues, but you won't see a lot of him. But trust me, that puts a three-year starter at any level, and some of the teams he's been able to compete against, that definitely puts him on the scoreboard for his future as a football player.